Imagine you're sitting at home with your family watching the evening news. A report flashes on the screen, voiced by your favorite news anchor. This report states the superiority of a new product and how its uses can beneficially affect your family and perhaps save your life. But this is no regular news story. What you just saw was a video news release, one of the many forms of Newsmercials being shown by television stations worldwide. A newsmercial is an advertisement for a product wearing the guise of informative news. The clip you saw would be spliced into a television broadcast, with no disclaimer explaining that it had been produced by an outside company for the benefit of said company. In some cases, an anchor or reporter from the station would overdub the clip, making it seem even more like real news. But is it just a cleverly disguised advertisement, or is it newsworthy material? The case we selected was titled Public Service or News-mercials. It discusses the use of newsmercials by a TV station known as WHAS Louisville for the Humana Hospital University. The television station, in conjunction with the hospital, ran public service announcements for the hospital's test kits for colorectal cancer. The ethical quandary lies in whether the station was actually running the story as a PSA or running it as a way to gain community support and advertising dollars. An ethicist from the University of North Carolina, Philip Meyer, does not believe the station was running an advertisement. If the object of news is to give people information so they can better their lives, what can better a life more than saving it? The ethical problem would be advertising disguised as news. That would put your credibility at risk. But there was no deception in this series. Dr. Tom Cooper believes that the ethics of the scenario can be evaluated by who can be helped and who can be hurt. He believes that as soon as a precedent of veiled advertising is set, then other forms of it can become acceptable. Our group was unsure of which side we agreed on, so we decided to run the scenario through a Potter box to test its ethical merit. The facts are as follows. WHAS Louisville ran a 15-part news series on a test screening for colorectal cancer, sponsored by Humana Hospital University. This style of broadcasting is a very standard advertising formula. A TV station teams up with a hospital and drug chain to promote a mass community health screening. The drug chain, which buys and distributes the kits free or for a nominal charge, gets publicity. The hospital usually gets referrals. The television station gets kudos for community involvement and can forge relationships with advertisers. In this case, there is an additional benefactor: Kroger supermarkets. In the 15-part series, a line was issued as follows: go to Kroger and pick up a test kit, then send to Humana Hospital University to get the results. It is not surprising why the anchors of the 11 o'clock news story found ways to run out of time to read it. The values we will use are as follows. The public's right to know. The news station should provide all available information on colorectal cancer and all available tests for it. Fairness. The news station should inform the public of all available outlets in which there are test kits. They should also inform of all forms of test kits. Consistency. If the news station is really interested in the health of the public, shouldn't they instruct them to go see their doctor? When trying to promote public service, they should fully service the public. Credibility. While the facts presented are true, are they the complete truth? Is Kroger the only store that carries test kits? Is this the only test available? Are you better off testing yourself than seeing your personal physician? The principles we will use for this case are as follows. The Radio Television News Directors Association Code of Ethics. It states that in order to gain public trust, journalists should understand that any commitment other than service to the public undermines trust and credibility. Provide a full range of information to enable the public to make enlightened decisions. And in commitment to truth, journalists should clearly disclose the origin of information and label all material provided by others. We will also use the Society of Professional Journalists Code of Ethics. This Code of Ethics states that journalists should be free of obligation other than the public's right to know. Therefore, by giving the testing company a 15-part series on colorectal cancer and testing supplies, and using this company to gain potential future investors, their obligation is to financial gain as opposed to informing the public. Journalists should also avoid conflicts of interests, remain free of associations and activities that may compromise their integrity or damage credibility, and to deny favored treatment to advertisers and special interests and resist their pressure to influence news coverage. In this case, the journalists that were broadcasting the news tried to find ways to avoid doing this series. They would attempt to run out of time. The journalists in this case did their best to abide by this rule, but the news station itself did not. They devoted time to this broadcast 15 times as opposed to covering other dangerous illnesses or other news. This also violates the Public Relations Code of Ethics. The companies that supplied the information about the testing supplies and where you can purchase them is a form of public relations. According to the Public Relations Code of Ethics, the intent of public relations is to build trust with the public by revealing all information needed for responsible decision-making. The company did not supply information concerning other testing products or other places where testing supplies could be purchased to the public. The guidelines that PR members should abide by are to be honest and accurate in all communications, reveal the sponsors for causes and interests represented, and to avoid deceptive practices. By not informing the viewing public that a specific company created the message, and by attempting to show it as a report by the news station solely, the public was not made fully aware of the circumstances that brought this news report about. They took the information they saw as the whole truth, as opposed to a message provided by a company. It also says that competition is a core principle. In it, a main idea is to serve the public interest by providing the widest choice of practitioner options. The Newsmercials only provided the single option of which testing kit and which store to purchase it from. Without providing further information, the public was not fully informed and could not make an educated decision. The loyalties we will use are the public. The news station's main loyalty should always be to the public. It should thoroughly inform the public of all necessary information on colorectal cancer, the tests possible, where to get the tests, and where to go. By providing information that favors only a few businesses, the loyalty switches from the public to the businesses. It is this switch that makes the information provided unethical. Newsmercials have become an accepted practice. We feel that if it's going to be done, there are ways to do it right. With combining the codes of ethics from each of the public relation and TV and radio journalists and the FCC regulations. In the case of journalists, they should state the source of the story before and after the story is aired. Identify the story as a newsmercial. Question the airing of the newsmercial prior to its airing. Never allow anonymity to any corporation or company providing information. Distinguish between advocacy and news reporting. Distinguish news from advertising and shun hybrids that blur the lines between the two. Ensure that the story being presented is being presented for the public good and not for financial gain. Never received gifts, compensation, or pay for promoting a news story. Never provide their voice to a newsmercial unless they are presenting the news during the broadcast. And provide comprehensive factual information on the topic being presented, including but not limited to other products available, other retailers that provide the service mentioned, and other options available to meet the needs of the public. Newsmercials providers should identify information provided as a newsmercial. Only distribute newsmercials when it is mostly beneficial for the public or when this is the only medium suitable for information provided. Make sure that the primary goal of the newsmercial is public good and not financial gain. Never provide information that would bring about ethical questions in journalism, public relations, or in radio, television news. Never hire journalists to provide voices for the newsmercial or label non-journalists as being journalists. And accurately label participants in newsmercials. Actors should be labeled as actors, experts should be labeled as experts. News stations and producers should never receive compensation for news provided by outside sources. Instruct journalists to do anything that violates their code of ethics. Use newsmercials as a means to do anything aside from inform the public. Provide unfair and unequal coverage to any specific outside source. In conclusion, we have now realized the actions of WHAS were unethical. By selling themselves out to a corporate provider and not genuinely having the public's interest in mind, they broke ethical guidelines provided them by any major organization they could claim to represent. The story has a sadder aspect to it, though. Most local stations lack funding to do real reporting, so they are lured into the glamour of newsmercials. An underfunded station would gladly take a free news release to fill time, especially one that may allow them to receive additional advertising and increase their funding for real news stories. Yet a station with a strong ethical core could follow our guidelines that we have assembled and maintain a level of integrity that will hopefully allow them to be recognized.